So now we've come to my favorite part of any build, the big reveal. Hello and welcome back to the Use What You've Got challenge. We've got our bodies just about there. I need to do a whole bunch of sanding to prep these for staining the appropriate colors. But before I do that, I want to fill some of these holes, specifically on this guy. Got some cracks here. And I learned a new trick to do that. That trick is much like the super glue drop fill, where you use dust. But instead of doing that, it suggests using the oil or finish that you're going to use. Now, I've got a couple of oils here. I'm not quite set exactly on which one I want to use. But the idea is that instead of the super glue, you use the oil and mix the powder with it. And in this case, I'm also going to mix a little bit of that red, just so it's pre-tinted before I put anything on there, because I have a feeling that once it's applied, it's not going to soak up a whole lot of the color afterwards. So I want to fill those spots first, and then we'll buff the rest of the body down so that we can get these nice and smooth along with the rest of it. And then we'll start applying color. The idea here is very much the same, but instead of using the glue as your hardener, you're going to be using a finish as your hardener. So I don't know if I'll end up using it, but I tend to go towards shellac, so I'm going to use a little bit of shellac to try this. And we'll just kind of see how this works out. So you get your sawdust, and just like you would with the other, you're going to make yourself a paste with that, and then the hardening agent, which in this case is going to be shellac. So I'm just going to kind of drip some on here. And so the idea is that this is going to harden in place and give you much the same result in color that you would get from the finish in the end when it hardens. Although, I gotta tell you, kind of looks like a bit of a slurry here, so hopefully when I sand back, it'll reduce some of this. So I'm just going to take some of the red pigment and drip that in there too. Try not to do too much, although this red looks like it's going to be a little darker than I'd like. But hopefully by just using a drop that I can mix this color down a little bit. So I can see some of the red tint in there. Don't want to go overboard. But basically the idea is you're just going to try and fill those gaps. Now I'm not too worried about going overboard because I am going to sand this. The nice thing about using the shellac is that the dry time is only an hour, so this all feels nice and solid. So now all that's left is to sand it back and see what the results are. I'd say that worked pretty well. This may be my new go-to for lightwood. The color didn't seem to stick very well, but I think I can work around that. Anyway, back to more sanding. Now before I get too carried away, I need to make these control covers. So very basically, I'm just doing the old tracing trick, where you run your pencil along the edge here. And then I'm going to cut these out and transfer them onto the pieces that I'm going to cut. I've already gone ahead and done it for the acoustic sonic guitar. I'm going to use an offcut from the top so that way I can do the same kind of die finish that I plan on doing to the top. Now these templates aren't going to be 100% accurate, so there will be some fine shaping to do, and I plan on cutting outside of the lines anyway. That way I have plenty of material to sand away. And this pocket here is not completely straight, so I plan to oversize it anyway, just so I can clean up the edges of this pocket, and that way I can get a nice fit in there. As the board that I played down for this one is actually cut off from the body, and it decided to split along one of the seams here. So I'm gonna have to wait for that one to dry out before I can cut out that one, but I can go ahead and cut out the other two. Now the camera might not pick up those gaps as well, but as you can see, it's sitting directly on top of those pockets. So basically I'm just going to trace around it to see where my points are that are too wide, like right here and in this corner right here. And I'm just going to carefully file away a little at a time until it fits perfectly into those slots. And as you can see, with a little bit of fine filing, they fit in very snugly. And I've even added this little access chamber right here just to be able to pop them out. They're a little proud, which is exactly what I was looking for. And we went ahead and did this one too. I haven't added the access to this one yet, but I plan on doing the magnets just like I had in the last couple. I really think it makes for a clean look. Alright, we've got both these prepped and ready to go for some color. I have taped off all the areas that I don't want the color to be in. And with this one, much like an acoustic, I'm trying to keep the area where the bridge is as clean as possible. So I will be obviously staining a little bit inside the perimeter of where that bridge is going to land, but leaving enough for the mounting surface so that I can glue the bridge on. Now these are both sanded up to about 320. And I'm going to start this by doing a wash. And what that wash does is it helps bring out any of the figure and grain. When you do a wash, you can do it in several different ways. You can do it with a black. If you want it to be really dark, you can do it with the same color so that it's more of a blend of that same color. I like to do it in a brown because the brown is more of a natural wood color. So all you're going to do is you're going to get a clean rag, you're going to soak it with the color, and you're going to fill as much of the wood as you can get to. And then once that is all dry, we're going to sand it back until most of that is gone except for what's in the figures. And then we're going to start with the colors that it's going to end up with. Now once those are dry, you're just going to sand them back until most of that color is gone. Not the most thrilled with how this one has turned out. It hasn't really made a whole lot stand out. There's a little figuring here. The big problem is that this is multiple boards joined together, so they're all a little different. This one turned out really well. So I'm going to go ahead and quick do a wash on this one. I'm just going to do it solid red. We won't know how bad it is until I get that color on. And worst comes to worst, I just sand it all off and start over. And then maybe I just do a solid red color. this one, I'm going to start with the center color. That way I can get the lines defined. And we're going to do something similar to an aqua burst. And I want to try and match that on the back plates too. Still don't mind the way it's coming out. You can still see a lot of the green. But we'll know more once it dries, and maybe I do a second coat of the blue color just to try and blend it more. But you can see these lines here that are darker, that's what the brown made stand out. Alright, now that these have dried, this blue has really come out, and I'm very happy with the result of that. So now we've come to my favorite part of any build, the big reveal. Now when you're doing colors, there are several options you can go with. Depending on the oil you use, it can alter the results. So you can use various grades of oils, like true oil will be more of a clear color. There are others that have more amber hues to them. So I'm going to use a Danish oil, which has a slight amber hue, and hopefully that'll make these colors more vibrant. Alright, now that these are at this point and they're nice and glossy, I've got to let them sit and cure for a while. So I think we're going to leave this video here. Key thing to note when you're doing stained finishes is the oil coats are to help keep the color in, and because oil sinks into the wood much like the dyes do, I don't do any sanding in between those coats, and I do about 3 of those coats. And then when you move to your final finish, that's when I start doing sanding between coats. I do a very, very light sanding on the first coat, because first coat you're still going to see some color coming up. So it's not until about the second or third coat that you do any of the heavier buffing to get all of the high parts off. And then you're left with this. Because I use shellac, I'm going to have to let these rest for about a week or 2 so they can fully cure and they're not tacky anymore. The next step in this build is to get the necks all sorted out. So I've got them nice and blocky at this point. So after about a couple days of those sitting, they should be good enough to do some light handling too, which will allow me to get the profile of the bolt-on joints. That way I can do the shaping of the neck. With that, don't forget to follow any of the other builders that are in the description below. Hopefully you've liked and subscribed, and leave me a comment. Now that these are wrapping up, I need to start thinking about what the next project's going to be. Let me know what you'd like to see. And with that, we'll see you in the next one.